My name is Leora Beaumont. I'm 33 years old, and that was the moment I watched my whole understanding of family fracture and start to fall apart. The room suddenly felt smaller, like the walls were inching closer. The only light came from my phone, a cold glow that made the rest of my apartment look like a stranger's place. My heart was pounding so loud it sounded like footsteps in the hallway. "No way," I whispered, opening my banking app with fingers that weren't quite steady. Face ID, spinning circle, then the numbers appeared. Negative balance, savings drained, credit card maxed out. I refreshed. Same, refreshed again. Still the same. $36,000. Gone. Not spent by me, not authorized by me, just missing. Like someone had reached through the screen and scooped out my future. For a few seconds, my brain tried to make it small. Maybe it's a glitch. Maybe it's just one wrong charge. Maybe I misread something. But the itemized list didn't care about my denial. Pending transactions, completed withdrawals, transfers I never made. I hit call on the back of my card info and pressed the phone to my ear, staring at the frozen numbers while upbeat hold music chirped in my ear like some kind of cosmic joke. "Thank you for calling Chase," an automated voice announced. "Your call may be monitored or recorded." My leg bounced under the table. I didn't even remember climbing out of bed and sitting at my tiny kitchen island. But there I was, in an oversized t-shirt, bare legs, and a rising sense of nausea. "Please hold while we connect you with a representative." The music came back, bright, cheerful, mocking. I thought about rent, about the trip I'd been saving for, about the emergency fund I'd built, dollar by dollar, while working late nights as a marketing director for a company that thought free coffee was an acceptable substitute for a raise. All of that, bleeding out in red numbers on a screen. "Thank you for holding," a woman's voice finally came on, smooth and professional. "This is Carla with Chase Customer Support. Can I have your full name, please?" "Leora Beaumont." My voice sounded strange, too calm for the way my hands were shaking. She went through the usual verification questions, and then she paused. "Okay, Ms. Beaumont, I do see some unusual activity here. Multiple large withdrawals and transfers over the past month. I'm going to read them out loud, and you tell me if you recognize any of these, all right?" "Okay," I said, but my stomach was already twisting. $8,500 to Denver Mortgage Solutions. $4,200 to Rocky Mountain Auto Repair. $3,800 to University of Colorado Hospital. Approximately $12,000 in cash withdrawals from various ATMs in Denver. Do any of those sound familiar to you? Denver. The word hit me harder than the amounts. Denver, where my parents lived. Denver, where my younger brother Garrett lived. Denver, where I hadn't set foot in 6 months. My kitchen suddenly felt 1,000 miles away from my own life. I live in Chicago," I said slowly. "I haven't been in Denver. Those charges aren't mine." "Understood," Carla said. Her tone shifted, more serious now. "Just to confirm, does anyone else have access to your mobile banking app, cards, or PINs?" I thought about Christmas, about my mother insisting on writing down my online banking login just in case there's an emergency, about the way my father had laughed and said, "What, you don't trust your own parents?" It had felt like guilt then. Now it felt like a loaded gun I'd handed them myself. "There are people who know my information," I admitted. "Family." "Okay," she said gently. "Based on these charges and the locations, we're likely dealing with unauthorized use by someone with access to your accounts. We can absolutely open a fraud investigation, but you'll also need to file a police report. Do you want to begin that process?" "Police report. Against who?" "Against the people who taught me to ride a bike, who sat in the bleachers at my high school graduation, who mailed me care packages in college, along with lists of bills they needed me to help pay." My throat closed up. "Can I call you back?" I asked. "Of course, Ms. Beaumont. I've noted our conversation. Please remember, the sooner you file, the sooner we can protect your accounts." I hung up and stared at the phone. There was only one explanation that made sense, only one path that all those Denver charges led back to. I scrolled through my contacts until I got to the name I still called every Sunday out of habit. "Dad?" I hit call. He answered on the third ring, voice thick with sleep. "Leora? Honey, it's almost 3 in the morning. What's wrong?" In the background, I heard the low murmur of a TV infomercial and the hum of their old fridge. Normal sounds, home sounds, sounds that used to comfort me. Now they made me feel sick. "Dad," I said, and my voice cracked. "Something's wrong with my account." I swallowed hard, forcing the words out. "My credit card is maxed out. My checking account is overdrawn by almost $40,000. The charges are in Denver. Is something going on? There was a rustling sound. Then my mother's voice floated through, sharp and awake now. What's going on? Put it on speaker, she snapped. Let me talk to her. The sound changed. Suddenly I could hear everything more clearly. The TV, Dad's breathing, Mom's sigh. Lyora, sweetie, she said, and the endearment felt like a hook. You're being dramatic again. We had some emergency expenses. I gripped the edge of the counter. Emergency? Expenses? Your father's back surgery ring a bell? She said. And Garrett's truck broke down right before his job interview. We couldn't let him lose that opportunity. The repair shop wanted the money up front. We used what was available. What was available? I repeated, staring at the negative balance. You mean my accounts? Dad's voice cut in, defensive now. Look, Lyora, we raised you. We fed you, clothed you, put you through college. You make 6 figures now in that fancy city. We thought you'd understand. This is just family taking care of family. The words hit like a slap. You owe us, Mom added quietly. After everything we sacrificed for you, you owe us. This isn't stealing, this is you giving back. I felt something in my chest crack. Not we're sorry, not we were desperate, not we'll pay you back. Just you owe us. I don't understand, I said, my voice barely louder than a whisper. My birthday is next week. I was planning to... Planning to what? Mom cut in, her laugh short and bitter. Buy yourself some expensive dinner? Take one of your little solo trips? You can celebrate another time. We are about to lose the house. I stared at the shadow of my own reflection in the dark kitchen window, my face half lit by the phone screen. That house is in my name, I said slowly. My credit. My signature. Exactly, Dad said, as if I'd proven his point. You wouldn't even have that credit score if we hadn't raised you right. We're not asking for charity. We're asking for what we're owed. Family pulls together. Something shifted inside me then. All the late night, can you cover this just this once calls? All the we'll pay you back when we can promises that never materialized. All the times they had called my paychecks our blessing, like it was a shared resource. I saw it all at once, like someone had finally turned on the overhead light in a room I'd lived in for years. You didn't even ask, I said. You just took it. We didn't want to stress you out, Mom snapped. You're too sensitive. You would have made a whole drama out of it, and we didn't have time for that. Your father needed the surgery. Garrett needed his truck. We made a decision as a family. As a family, I repeated, without me. Silence hummed on the line, thick and heavy. Don't call me again, I heard myself say. The words came from somewhere deeper than anger, deeper than fear, somewhere like survival. Lyora, don't be ridiculous. I hung up. The call disconnected, and the quiet in my apartment roared. That was the moment I realized I wasn't their daughter in their eyes. I was their bank. I sat there for a long time, staring at the negative balance like it might suddenly climb back into the positives if I blinked enough. It didn't. So I got up. I made coffee with hands that were steadier than they had any right to be. I opened my laptop and pulled up a blank spreadsheet, rows and columns waiting to be filled. If I'm their bank, I whispered to no one, then I'm about to close the branch. I picked up my phone and called Chase back. I need to report unauthorized access to my accounts, I said when the new representative answered. Ma'am, he began carefully, earlier you mentioned that family members might be involved in these transactions. I did, I replied. Let me correct that. These charges were made by people who had my information without my permission. That's not help. That's identity theft. There was a brief pause. When he spoke again, his tone had changed. Understood, Ms. Beaumont. We'll begin the fraud investigation immediately. You'll need to file a police report as well to document this. I wrote down the words police report on the pad next to my laptop, my pen pressing so hard it nearly tore through the paper. I wasn't just changing my passwords. I was changing my life. After I hung up with the bank, the apartment settled into that early morning quiet that feels almost sacred. Streetlights still glowed outside, and somewhere below, a delivery truck hissed to a stop. My world, though, felt like it had lost gravity. I opened my laptop. Blank spreadsheet. New document. New life. In the first cell, I typed, Financial Entanglements, Beaumont Family. My fingers hesitated over the keyboard for a heartbeat, then started moving. First, I logged into my main checking and savings accounts again, just to make sure this nightmare was still real. It was. Negative balance, savings wiped, credit card maxed, pending fraud investigation. A part of me wanted to close the laptop and crawl back into bed, pull the covers over my head, and pretend this was all some elaborate bookkeeping mistake. But another part, The part that had forced herself through college on scholarships and late night shifts, while my parents couldn't quite contribute this month, took over. If they wanted to treat me like their bank, then I needed to act like one. I started going through every account I could remember: mortgage portal, vehicle loans, old student loan servicers, online retailers, streaming services, phone plan, gym membership. One by one, I logged in. One by one, the truth lined up on the page like evidence. The first surprise was the mortgage. I pulled up the portal for Denver Mortgage Solutions and stared at the screen. Property owner, David and Nancy. Beaumont co-borrower, Leora Beaumont. Status delinquent, 30 days past due. I closed my eyes for a second, remembering the day my parents had called me 2 years earlier. Leora, sweetheart, the bank is being ridiculous, Mom had said, her voice sugar-sweet and pleading. They're saying our credit isn't quite where it needs to be. Could you just co-sign, just to help us get approved? You know we always pay our bills. We just need your good name on paper. My good name was now attached to a house I didn't live in, and a delinquent mortgage payment I hadn't even known existed. I typed it into the spreadsheet. Mortgage, Denver, cosigner, delinquent. Next, Colorado State Bank and Trust. Garrett's truck. I dug through old emails until I found the original loan approval, then used the account number to log in. My stomach clenched when the dashboard loaded. Primary borrower, Garrett Beaumont. Cosigner, Leora Beaumont. Status at risk, past due, watch payment modified. Past due, I whispered. Of course. I typed it into the spreadsheet. Garrett's truck, cosigner, past due. Then Mom's student loan account. She'd decided 3 years ago that she wanted to go back to school and reinvent herself. Nursing, that time. There had been forms, so many forms. She'd been overwhelmed. I'd filled them out for her. My name stared back at me from the screen. Borrower, Nancy Beaumont. Cosigner, Leora Beaumont. Status in forbearance. Interest accruing. I added it to the list. Student loan, Mom, cosigner, active. By the time the sun started to lighten the sky outside my window, my spreadsheet had grown longer than I ever imagined. It wasn't just the big things. It was the smaller drains, too. The temporary cell phone lines I'd added for them on my plan when their provider messed up their bill. The streaming services where they were listed as authorized users. The Costco membership that was, apparently, their primary grocery source now. It was like looking at an X-ray of my entire adult relationship with them and discovering that every bone was fractured. My phone buzzed. A text from a familiar number. Garrett. Leora, what's going on? Mom's crying, saying you're going to ruin everything over money. It's not that serious. I stared at the message, the words blurring for a second. Not that serious. $36,000 wasn't serious. My credit score tied to a house I didn't live in wasn't serious. The fact that my parents had broken into my financial life like burglars and called it love wasn't serious. My thumb hovered over the keyboard. I typed, check your truck payment status. 3 dots appeared. Disappeared. Appeared again. What do you mean? He finally wrote. I didn't answer. Instead, I picked up the phone and dialed the number for Colorado State Bank and Trust from the website. Thank you for calling Colorado State Bank and Trust. How can I assist you today? A polite voice asked. I need to discuss a vehicle loan where I'm listed as the cosigner, I said. I read off the account number from my laptop. There was a pause while the rep pulled up the account information. Yes, I see that here. You're listed as cosigner for Mr. Garrett Beaumont. How can I help? I want to remove myself as cosigner, I said. Another pause. Ma'am, removing a cosigner typically requires either full payment of the remaining balance or refinancing the loan with a borrower who can qualify independently. Otherwise, the vehicle may need to be surrendered to avoid default. The primary borrower would need to meet the lender's criteria alone. Do you know if Mr. Beaumont can qualify on his own? I thought about the half-hearted jobs he bounced between, the way my parents always said, Garrett just needs one big break. I'm going to assume he can't, I said quietly, but I still need the paperwork to begin removing myself. I no longer consent to being financially responsible for this loan. The rep's voice softened. I understand. I can email you the forms. Please be aware that if Mr. Beaumont can't refinance, the vehicle may be repossessed. I understand, I repeated. I gave him my email and hung up. Almost immediately, my phone lit up again. Garrett, did you just call the bank? They sent me some weird notification. What are you doing? I put the phone face down on the table. Next call, the mortgage company. Hi, I need to speak to someone about a mortgage where I'm listed as a co-borrower, I said. They pulled up the file. Same story, same leverage. Without my income and credit, my parents would have 30 days to refinance the loan or face foreclosure proceedings. The house, the truck, the student loans, the lines and memberships. My life, sliced into monthly payments I hadn't even realized were chained to me. As I worked my way down the spreadsheet, my phone buzzed nonstop. Dad, Mom, Garrett. Unknown numbers from Colorado. I ignored all of them until Mom's name lit up the screen again, and something like muscle memory made me answer. Leora Beaumont, I said, because I didn't trust myself to say anything else without shaking. You stop this nonsense right now, Mom snapped in my ear. No hello. No, are you okay? The bank just called. You're tampering with accounts you have no business touching. You're going to make us lose everything. You already lost everything, I said, surprising even myself with how steady my voice sounded. You lost it the moment you decided to steal from me. We didn't steal, she hissed. We're family. Family helps each other. Family asks for help, I shot back. Family doesn't sneak into mobile banking apps at 2 in the morning and drain their daughter's life savings. Your father needed that surgery, she said. Garrett needed that truck. We did what we had to do. Then you should have called me, I said. You should have explained. You should have asked. Instead, you decided I was your property, that my money was your money, that my credit was your credit. You are being selfish, she said, the word laced with disgust. We raised you better than this. No, I said, feeling something hot and electric rise in my chest. You raised me to fix your problems. There's a difference. I hung up before she could answer. For a moment, the quiet felt like guilt. Then I looked back at the spreadsheet, at the red numbers in my account, at the column labeled Risk to Me, at the notes I'd added in another column, no consent, no discussion, no boundary. And the guilt shifted into something else. Grief, anger, and under all of that, a thin, sharp thread of clarity. I opened a new tab and navigated to the Chicago Police Department's online reporting portal. My fingers shook as I clicked Report Financial Crime. The questions were dry, almost clinical. Describe the incident. Relationship to alleged perpetrators. Estimated financial loss. Were the individuals given access to your accounts for the purpose of managing your finances? I filled in every box. Yes, they had access. No, not for this purpose. Yes, I had confronted them. No, they did not see it as theft. When the form asked, "Do you believe this incident constitutes identity theft or fraud?" I hesitated for only a moment. Then I checked both boxes. At the end of the form, a confirmation screen popped up. Your report has been submitted, incident number 2025 FC 11847. An officer will contact you to follow up if needed. I wrote the incident number on my notepad, right under police report, and circled it. My phone buzzed again. A voicemail notification this time. I didn't listen to it. Not yet. Instead, I leaned back in my chair and looked around my little apartment, my plants on the windowsill, my secondhand bookshelf. The cheap but sturdy table where I'd eaten countless quick dinners between late meetings and early mornings. For years, this space had never fully felt like mine. Not really. There was always a bill, a crisis, a just this once pulling me back toward Denver, towards their emergencies, towards their gravity. But as I stared at the spreadsheet, the police report confirmation, the emails from the bank and the lender, I realized something. This was the first time I had ever chosen myself over them. Not because I didn't love them, but because, for the first time, I loved the idea of a future where I wasn't their safety net more than I feared their disapproval. I opened my banking app again. Negative balance. Still there, but now when I looked at it, I didn't feel helpless. I felt awake. My phone started buzzing again, vibrating across the table like it was trying to escape. It kept buzzing for 3 straight hours while I finished my spreadsheet, called more companies, and made a list of every subscription and service they were attached to through me. That was when the pounding on my apartment door started. The pounding started like thunder, sudden, violent, echoing through the hallway of my apartment building. At first, I didn't even register what it was. I'd been hunched over my laptop for hours, immersed in the cold, methodical unraveling of the financial knots I'd spent a lifetime pretending weren't there. My brain had gone numb from legal terms, account numbers, and customer service hold music. But the pounding grew louder. "Leora, open this door right now!" My father's voice, sharp, furious, and way too close. I froze. My phone buzzed beside me. 27 missed calls from my parents, 8 from Garrett, a handful from unknown Colorado numbers. A text from my cousin Brooklyn saying, "Are you okay? What's happening?" Another slam to my door shook the frame. "Leora, I know you're in there," Dad yelled. "We need to talk." I stood up slowly, heart kicking into a sprint. My apartment felt suddenly too small, my breath too shallow. They had driven here. They had driven 16 hours, straight through the night, to confront me. Of course they had. People don't give up on their personal ATM that easily. I walked toward the door but stopped a foot away, placing my palm flat against the wood. I didn't open it. I didn't unlock it. I just touched it the way people touch gravestones, as a way of acknowledging something that used to be alive. Mom's voice cut through the air next, pitched high with performative desperation. "Lyora, sweetheart, the bank is threatening foreclosure. They're saying we need to refinance within 30 days. You're causing this. Please, honey, don't do this to us. Don't do this to us," as if I had taken anything from them, as if they weren't the ones who had drained me dry. I leaned my forehead gently against the door. "You threw yourselves out when you stole from me," I said. Not yelling, not emotional, just stating a fact. "We didn't steal," Dad roared. "We took what we needed from someone who had plenty." Those words, that tone, that entitlement, they hit me with the force of a freight train. Because it wasn't just justification, it wasn't just denial, it was confession. Dad kept talking, voice barely coherent with rage. "You make 6 figures. You live in this fancy apartment, in this big city with your big title and your big salary. You don't even have kids. What do you need all that money for?" I pulled away from the door like it had burned me. What did I need all that money for? Let's see. My retirement fund, which they had helped drain, my emergency savings, which they had siphoned away, my future, my life, that I had built from the ground up, brick by brick, while they stood on top of it, demanding more. My mom's voice softened, dripping with wounded fragility. "Lyora, please, sweetheart. We're not asking for charity. We're just asking for help. We gave you everything when you were growing up." "You gave me trauma and debt," I snapped. The words came out without permission and without apology, and for the first time in my life, they felt like the truth instead of betrayal. Silence, then whispering between them. Then Mom again, sniffling theatrically. "You're being cruel. This isn't who we raised you to be." "No," I said slowly. "It's who I had to become to survive being raised by you." I stepped away from the door completely. I wasn't going to let them drag me back into the role they'd assigned me at 12 years old. The fixer, the rescuer, the golden credit score. I walked back to my kitchen counter, picked up my phone, and pressed play on the voicemail from earlier. Dad's voice crackled through the speaker. "Lyora, if you don't answer, we're coming over there. We're not going to let you ruin our lives over a misunderstanding." A misunderstanding. I could have laughed if it didn't feel so much like choking. The pounding resumed, harder this time. "Lyora Beaumont," Dad bellowed. "Open this damn door." I didn't. Instead, I sat down at the kitchen table, picked up my mug of cold coffee, and took a long, steady sip. If they were going to force themselves into my life physically, then I needed to cut ties digitally, completely, permanently, cleanly. So I opened my wireless carrier's app. 2 names stared at me from the family plan section. David Beaumont. Nancy Beaumont. They had been using my plan for years because our phone company keeps messing up our bill. Every month, I told myself I'd cancel it. Every month, guilt sank its claws in deeper. Not today. I selected both lines, hit remove from plan, confirmed. The confirmation message popped up. These lines will be deactivated within 60 minutes. I exhaled for what felt like the first time all morning. Next, Netflix. Remove authorized users. Change the password. Amazon. Hulu. Spotify. My gym membership, which Dad had been borrowing to use their sauna. My Costco account, which had apparently become their grocery provider. My auto-replenish pantry items, which had all been shipped to their Denver address. One by one, I cut every cord. Every little financial tether they had quietly roped around me, every account where my generosity had turned into obligation, every piece of convenience that had become exploitation. Delete, change password, remove access, block device, confirm action, confirm again. The pounding on the door intensified. "Leora, talk to us. We're your parents." But my parents should have protected me. My parents should have respected boundaries. My parents shouldn't have used me as a financial life support system until I flatlined. I ignored the pounding and dialed a different number. Chicago Police Department. "Hi," I said when the operator answered. My voice was eerily calm. "I need to speak with someone about a financial crime. I've already filed an online report but would like to follow up." Within minutes, a soft-spoken officer named Martinez got on the line. She listened as I explained the withdrawals, the cosigner mess, the house in my name, the truck loan, the credit drain. This happens more than you'd think, she said gently. Family members often assume they have the right to use an adult child's accounts, but legally, it's still identity theft. The pounding on my door continued in the background. Are they at your residence right now? She asked. Yes. They cannot force entry. If you feel unsafe, we can send a patrol. I hesitated. I didn't feel unsafe. I felt awake, focused, more myself than I'd felt in years. No, I said, they'll leave. Okay, but remember, you have the right to set boundaries, even with family. Even with family? After the call, I hung up and set my phone down. The hallway outside had gone quiet. A moment later, I heard footsteps. Dad's voice floated back, now from farther away. This isn't over, Leora. Family doesn't give up on family. Maybe not. But sometimes, family gives up on pretending these people are good for them. I opened my laptop again. The spreadsheet sat there, waiting. Rows and rows of obligations I had never chosen. Not anymore. I clicked to save the file. Then, with a steadiness that surprised even me, I picked up my phone one more time. Hi, Dr. Patterson, I said when my therapist answered her emergency line. I think I need to schedule some extra sessions. I just set some boundaries with my family. I swallowed hard. And I think I'm finally ready to talk about why it took me 33 years to do it. Her voice was warm, gentle. I'm proud of you, Lyora. Saying no is sometimes the first real act of survival. After I hung up, I walked to my window. Morning light was finally spilling into my apartment. For the first time ever, it looked like mine. When the hallway finally went quiet and their footsteps disappeared down the stairwell, I expected to feel relief. Instead, I felt hollow, like someone had scraped out everything soft inside me and left only the sharp edges. My phone buzzed again. A notification banner dropped down across the screen. Clark Beaumont Family Updates. 37 new messages. I didn't even know there was a family group chat without me. Curiosity is a dangerous thing, but in that moment, it was stronger than fear. I opened it. Aunt Linda, I can't believe what Lyora is doing. Poor Nancy and David are practically homeless because of her. Uncle Pete, some kids forget where they come from. All that success went to her head. Cousin Trevor, knew she'd turn selfish eventually. Corporate types always do. Then Garrett, my brother. Blood. The one they'd destroyed my bank account for. Garrett, truck got repossessed today. Thanks a lot, sis. Really nice family spirit you have. My stomach twisted. Then another message popped up. This one from my cousin Brooklyn, sent privately. Brooklyn, I'm sorry. Mom added me to the chat, and I thought you needed to see what they're saying. Maybe I shouldn't have. Are you okay? My thumbs hovered over the screen. Then I typed the truest sentence I'd typed all year. Leora, thanks for showing me. I need to know who I'm dealing with. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared, then reappeared. Brooklyn. They're scared. Uncle David says the house is going into foreclosure if they don't get a loan. Garrett says he can't get to work without the truck. Your mom hasn't stopped crying. I closed my eyes. The old version of me, the fixer, would have leapt into action, called a bank, shifted some money, sent a check, solved everything, silenced the chaos. But that version of me was dying. This isn't my fire to put out, I whispered into the empty room. Then I typed back, Leora. They're experiencing the consequences of their choices. That isn't cruelty, that's reality. Minutes passed before her next message came through. Brooklyn. But they're your parents. Leora. Parents don't get to steal from their adult children and call it family responsibility. There was a long pause on her end. Then, Brooklyn, you're different lately. Leora, I'm healing. I took screenshots of all the group chat messages, every accusation, every manipulation, every guilt-soaked sentence. Then I forwarded the entire batch to the only person who would see it for what it was, my lawyer. Leora to Sam, adding these to the harassment file. His reply came within seconds. Sam. Good. This establishes a clear pattern of financial coercion and emotional manipulation. How are you feeling? How was I feeling? Like I was standing barefoot on the scorched ground of my old life. But also, like the smoke was finally clearing. Leora, holding up. Sam, call me if you need anything. I set the phone down and exhaled shakily. And for the first time that day, my chest didn't feel like it was collapsing inward. By noon, the adrenaline crash hit. My hands trembled as I made a cup of tea. My jaw ached from clenching. Every part of me felt stretched thin. So when the phone buzzed again with a call from an unknown Colorado number, something inside me braced. I answered. Leora? my mother's voice, a whisper frayed with exhaustion. Sweetheart, we need to talk. Hearing her sound small hurt in a way I wasn't proud of. But I kept my voice steady. What is it, Mom? The bank. They said the mortgage is in default. They said we need to refinance, and they're asking about your removal from the loan. Leora, honey, please, we're desperate. Desperate. Her saying it felt like a hook tugging at old wounds. Once, that word would have shattered me into compliance. Now it just sat there. Mom, I said carefully, you committed financial fraud against me. We didn't commit anything, she protested, voice cracking. We used your account because your father needed surgery, because Garrett needed his truck to get a job. We're your family. And family asks for help, I said quietly. Family doesn't break into their child's bank account and drain their life savings. It wasn't like that, she insisted. We thought you'd understand. You have more than we do. There it was again. The entitlement, the justification, the twist of the knife. You had options, I said. You could have gotten medical financing. You could have taken out a personal loan. You could have sold the truck. You chose the option that cost me everything. She sobbed softly into the phone. You're being heartless. No, I corrected. I'm being healthy. I hung up before she could say anything else. Then I opened the fridge. And for the first time in my adult life, I made myself lunch without calculating how much money I'd have to send to Denver afterward. Later that afternoon, during my scheduled session, Dr. Patterson listened patiently as I relayed everything, from the theft, to the confrontation, to the pounding on my door, to the group chat war zone. When I finished, she folded her hands gently. Leora, this isn't just about the money. This is about roles you were placed in before you were even old enough to understand them. I know, I said. I've been their provider since I was 12. And what happens, she asked softly, when a child is forced to become the parent? I didn't answer, because the truth was too heavy. Dr. Patterson's voice softened further. You've spent your entire life being responsible for your parents' well-being, but you've never been taught that your well-being matters too. My throat tightened. So what do I do now? I whispered. You grieve the family you never had, she said, and you build healthier boundaries with the one you do have. Her words settled into me like stones finding the bottom of a lake. Solid, grounding, undeniably true. That evening, I did something small but monumental. I checked my retirement account. For years, it had been chipped away by emergencies. Mine, theirs, mostly theirs. But now, the balance was growing again. Slowly, steadily, like something inside me was finally healing. I almost smiled. Then, a text from an unknown number flashed across my screen. This is your father. Your mother is in the ER. Anxiety attack. Hope you're happy. The words punched through my ribcage. The old me would have panicked, grabbed her keys, driven to the airport, flown straight to Denver. The new me stared at the message for exactly 3 seconds, then forwarded it to Dr. Patterson. Leora, is this emotional blackmail? Her response was immediate. Dr. Patterson, textbook example. How do you want to handle it? I looked out my window at the Chicago skyline, the lights flickering like tiny reminders of the life I had built without them. Then I typed back to the unknown number. I hope Mom gets the help she needs. Professional help. And I blocked the number. Just like that. My hands didn't even shake. That night, I met Zoe and a few coworkers for sushi. We toasted to something silly, some client win, but I knew I was celebrating something else entirely. Freedom. You seem lighter, Zoe said, studying me over her miso soup. I cut some toxic people out of my life today, I replied. She raised her glass. Good. Life's too short for anyone who drains you. She had no idea how true that was. I smiled, feeling something unrecognizable bloom in my chest. Something like hope. 3 days passed. 3 days without a single call from my parents. 3 days without a guilt-laced voicemail, a panicked text from Garrett, or another passive-aggressive family group chat notification. It should have felt peaceful. It didn't. It felt like the quiet before a storm. Unnatural. Heavy. Waiting for something to break. And it did. At 7:14 a.m. on the third day, my doorbell rang. A soft, polite chime. Not my father's fists. Not my mother's nails scraping desperation into wood. Not Garrett pounding like he owned the building. This was different, almost respectful. I approached the door cautiously, peered through the peephole, and blinked. A woman stood there, mid-50s, neat bun, navy blazer, holding a manila envelope against her chest. She looked like someone who spent her life delivering information people didn't want to hear. Can I help you? I called through the door. Her expression softened when she heard my voice. Are you Leora Beaumont? Yes. She pulled an ID badge from her blazer pocket and held it up. My name is Patricia Hoffman. I'm with Denver Family Services. My heart dropped. Of course it wasn't over. I undid the chain and opened the door just far enough to speak comfortably. Why are you here? She shifted the envelope slightly, as if its weight were symbolic. Your parents listed you as next of kin and emergency contact in their application for emergency housing assistance. There are some discrepancies we need to clarify. Of course there were. I stepped aside. You can come in. She entered with the stiff politeness of someone who had witnessed hundreds of family implosions and kept a respectful emotional distance from all of them. Would you like water? Coffee? I asked automatically, then caught myself. Old habits. I didn't owe her hospitality. No, thank you, she said gently. This shouldn't take long. She placed the envelope on my table and removed a form. Your parents applied for emergency housing due to foreclosure and financial instability. They indicated they have no income, no assets, and no available family support. Ouch. That landed harder than I expected. They didn't lie, I said hollowly. I'm not supporting them. Patricia hesitated. I understand, but our office cross-referenced their application with credit and mortgage records. It appears the house in foreclosure lists you as co-signer. The vehicle loans tied to Mr. Garrett Beaumont also list you as co-signer. And several credit accounts designate you as a guarantor or authorized user. The spreadsheet flashed through my mind like a fever dream. So what do you need from me? I asked. We need you to sign an affidavit stating whether you are currently providing financial support to your parents, and if not, why that support is unavailable. She slid the form across the table. The question on the page felt like a punch. Are you currently providing financial assistance to the applicants? If no, please explain why assistance is not available. Explain why. Explain why. As if they stole $36,000 from me, needed elaboration. I swallowed hard. If I sign this, what happens to their application? Patricia clasped her hands together. If they've misrepresented their financial situation or available support, their application could be denied. They would still be eligible for crisis intervention services, but long-term housing assistance would be impacted. I nodded slowly, absorbing the weight of that. She wasn't saying, your parents might lose housing, but she was saying it. Do you mind if I take a moment? I asked. Of course. She stepped back respectfully, giving me space. I walked to the window. Chicago was waking up, cars humming, faint conversations drifting up from the street below, the world turning as if my life weren't dangling between guilt and boundaries. My phone buzzed in my pocket. Unknown number. I answered. Lyora? My mother's voice, thin, trembling. Thank God. We're at the Sunset Motel on Kipfax, room 127. We've been here for 5 days. There are unpleasant people here. Your father is scared to leave me alone. I stared at the affidavit, the blank line waiting for explanation. Mom, the social worker came by, I said calmly. She told me you claimed I cut you off completely. We had to lie, she cried. We had to. They asked about family support, and what were we supposed to say? That our own daughter abandoned us? The words ricocheted inside my skull. You didn't lie, I said quietly. I did cut you off, because you committed financial fraud. We didn't commit anything, she insisted, voice rising. We did what we had to do. We were drowning. We needed help. But you didn't ask for help, I said. You stole it. Silence. Then a small, broken question. So what are we supposed to do? Live on the street? I closed my eyes. You're supposed to figure it out, like every adult in America figures it out. We're in our 60s, she whispered. Who is going to hire us? I don't know, I said honestly. But that's not my responsibility anymore. Her sob cracked down the line like glass breaking. Please, Lyora, just help us get into an apartment. We'll pay you back. With what? I asked softly. You haven't repaid a cent of the money I loaned you in the last decade. You haven't held stable jobs. You've lived off my credit, my accounts, my income. We'll find a way, she insisted desperately. Then do it, I said. My voice surprised even me, calm, steady, unwavering. Do it without me. There was a beat of stunned quiet. You're heartless, she breathed. No, I replied. I'm healthy. I hung up. Patricia watched me with practiced neutrality, though I saw sympathy flicker in her eyes. I picked up the pen. My hand didn't shake. I checked the box next to, no, I am not providing financial support. And on the line beneath, assistance is not available due to applicants committing financial fraud against me, resulting in termination of all financial relationships. I signed my name. The ink felt like a declaration, a severance, a rebirth. Patricia accepted the form and packed her folder. For what it's worth, she said softly, many adult children feel obligated to support parents who never learned to be self-sufficient. It's more common than you think. But enabling dependency doesn't help either party. Thank you, I whispered. When she left, the apartment door clicked shut with finality. 2 hours later, Garrett called. I let it go to voicemail. He called again, and again, and I finally picked up on the fourth attempt. What? I asked, exhausted. His voice was tense, brittle. Mom's talking about dark things. My stomach tightened. What kind of dark things? He hesitated. Like, maybe everyone would be better off if she weren't around. An icy shard lodged itself under my ribs. Is she threatening to hurt herself? I asked quietly. She's just saying stuff, he snapped. She's depressed, Leora, and Dad's not doing well either. Their whole world is falling apart. Because of their choices, I said gently. Because you turned your back on them, he snapped. No, I whispered, because they tried to drown me, and I finally swam away. He went silent. Then, you could fix this with one phone call. I could enable it with one phone call, I corrected, but I can't fix it. So you're just going to let them be homeless? No, I said. I'm going to let them be adults. He cursed under his breath and hung up. The second the call disconnected, I dialed a number I had saved years ago for a work training, but never used. Denver Crisis Hotline. Hello, I said quietly. I need to report a potential mental health emergency at the Sunset Motel on Kipfax. I gave Mom's name, Dad's, their room number. The operator thanked me for caring enough to call. When I hung up, I stood in my living room, staring at nothing, feeling everything. I didn't cry, not because I wasn't hurting, but because something inside me understood this truth. Sometimes love looks like holding someone up, and sometimes love looks like stepping back so they can finally learn to stand. 6 months. That's how long the silence lasted. 6 months without late-night crisis calls. 6 months without my bank app showing unexpected activity. 6 months without being told I owed them for existing. 6 months of something I'd never experienced before. Peace. I didn't realize how much of my life had been spent bracing for impact until there were no impacts left to brace for. I started sleeping through the night. I started cooking real meals, not the exhausted microwave dinners I used to shove down between financial emergencies. I even started painting again. Not well, not consistently, but enough to remind myself that hobbies weren't luxuries. They were allowed. My savings account slowly grew. My retirement contributions maxed out early. My credit score, finally free from being used as a universal guarantee, reached a number I hadn't seen since before college. Every week in therapy peeled back another layer of old scars I'd mistaken for personality traits. You're not cold, Dr. Patterson told me once. You're tired. Exhaustion can look like indifference when it's actually survival. I believed her. Slowly. Quietly. Then, on a Tuesday evening, everything shifted again. I was in my kitchen stirring pasta sauce when my phone rang with a number I didn't recognize. For the first time in months, I didn't flinch. Hello? I said, casual, relaxed. Leora. My father's voice. I didn't realize I'd set the spoon down until it clattered in the sink. My heartbeat ricocheted through my chest. Dad? I said cautiously. There was a pause, an unfamiliar one. Hesitant, shrunken, almost afraid. We're in Chicago, he said. My stomach dropped. Where in Chicago? The lobby of your building. I gripped the counter to steady myself. Why? We need to talk. Really talk. We've been here about an hour. The doorman said he can't let us up without your permission. Of course he couldn't. I had given strict instructions. What do you want? I asked, keeping my tone flat. We're not here for money, he said quickly, as if he knew I'd assume that. We're not here to guilt you. We're not here to ask for anything. We need 5 minutes, please. I took a breath. Then another. Then another. The part of me that used to respond out of obligation tried to claw its way forward. But the part of me that had healed? The part that had built a life without them? She held steady. Are you here to ask me to be your co-signer again? I asked bluntly. No. Are you here to blame me for what happened? No, he said, voice cracking. We know that was our doing. And you're not here to manipulate me back into financial support? No, he rasped. Leora, please, just come down, or let us come up. We need to tell you something. I stared at the floor, at the tiny splash of red sauce by my foot. 6 months ago, I would have caved. Today, I still didn't know. I hesitated for a long, aching moment. Then I exhaled and walked to the intercom panel. My finger hovered over the button. Against every survival instinct I'd built, I pressed allow entry. The elevator dinged a few minutes later. My parents stepped out, and I almost didn't recognize them. Dad wasn't the red-faced, booming man who had pounded on my door. His shoulders had deflated. His hair, once dyed to hide the gray, was now fully salt and pepper. He looked smaller. Mom had aged even more, lines carved deep around her mouth, eyes swollen, not from crying, but from years of strain. She wore a coat I didn't know, not one I'd bought her, and her hair was pulled back simply, without the usual attempt at glamour. They stood awkwardly in the hallway, unsure if they were allowed to step closer. I waited. When they reached the threshold of my apartment, neither crossed it until I moved aside. They entered like guests, not owners. My mother's voice broke the silence first. "Your apartment is beautiful," she whispered, touching the edge of my bookshelf as if afraid she'd leave fingerprints. "Thank you," I said. My dad cleared his throat. We got jobs." I blinked. "Jobs?" He nodded. "Your mother's working as a grocery store cashier. I'm doing maintenance at an apartment complex. It's not much, but it includes a small unit for us to live in." Mom gave a small embarrassed smile. "It's tiny, but it's clean, and it's ours." I didn't know how to respond. My mind needed time to catch up. He continued, "We've been in counseling, financial counseling, and regular counseling too." He swallowed. "The therapist, she asked us to make a list of times we asked you for money, or used your credit, or expected you to handle something we didn't want to deal with." Mom's eyes filled. "The list was 8 pages long," she whispered. I sat down slowly, unable to hold myself upright. Dad's voice shook. "We didn't realize how much we leaned on you. No, that's not the right word. We didn't realize how much we took from you." Mom wiped her cheek. "You were 12 when we first asked you to get a job, because we couldn't keep the lights on. We told ourselves you were mature for your age, but the truth was, we weren't. And when you got older," Dad said, "you became our safety net. We told ourselves we deserved your help because we'd raised you. But parents aren't supposed to depend on their children like that. Not financially, not emotionally, not that way." The confession hung in the air, and for once I didn't feel anger. I felt grief, deep, cavernous grief for the childhood I'd never had, the peace I'd never known, the daughter I'd never been allowed to be. Mom reached into her purse with trembling hands. We wanted to give you this." She handed me a small envelope. Inside was a $50 bill and a note. "From our first paychecks. It's not enough. It will never be enough. But it's a start. Mom and Dad." My throat closed. I didn't say anything. I couldn't. Dad placed his palms on his knees and leaned forward. "Leora, we know we can't undo what we did. We know we can't erase the damage. We don't expect forgiveness. We don't even expect a relationship." Mom nodded through her tears. "We just needed you to know we understand now. Truly understand. You weren't heartless. You were drowning." Silence. Then Dad asked the question I didn't know I needed. What do you want from us now?" It took me a long time to answer. Finally, I said, "I want a relationship with you that doesn't cost me my life." They both exhaled, a sound of relief and sorrow and something like hope. When they left, I didn't collapse. I didn't cry. I just walked to the kitchen counter and set the $50 bill inside a glass jar. The first honest thing they had given me in 20 years. After my parents left my apartment that day, the silence felt different. Not heavy, not punishing, not the suffocating quiet that used to mean they were waiting for me to fix something. The silence felt like a clean slate. I stood there for a long moment, staring at the glass jar on my counter, the one now holding a single crisp $50 bill, money I didn't need but couldn't bring myself to ignore. It wasn't about the amount, it was about the intent. For the first time in my adult life, my parents had given me something without expecting anything in return. It unsettled me. It moved me. It cracked something open inside me. But healing isn't instant. It isn't cinematic. It doesn't arrive in a single moment of apology, even a sincere one. It comes slowly, the kind of slow that requires patience, consistency, and proof. And over the next 2 years, that proof came. At first, our communication was sparse. A text from my mom here and there. "Mom, saw your post about your promotion. Proud of you. No guilt. No, we raised you right. Just pride." Or my father, occasionally. "Dad, just wanted to say I hope your week goes well. No emergencies, no requests, no emotional traps disguised as vulnerability." It was strange. Healing felt like walking on unfamiliar ground, testing it with each step. But they never asked for money. They never asked me to co-sign anything. They never crossed a boundary I set, something I wouldn't have believed possible a year earlier. 3 months after our talk in Chicago, I received an envelope in the mail. Inside, another $20 bill and a note. "We know it's small, but small is honest. Love you. Mom and Dad." It felt surreal, not because of the money, but because they meant the words. I added it to the jar. In therapy, I learned something hard to swallow. Forgiveness isn't always reconciliation, but reconciliation isn't possible without accountability. My parents were finally accountable, not perfect, not transformed overnight, but trying. And trying mattered. My relationship with my brother took longer, much longer. He was angry, furious even, when his truck was repossessed and he could no longer lean on me the way our parents had taught him to. For months, his messages were sharp, defensive, blaming. I ignored them or responded with boundaries. Then, in month 8, I received Garrett. Got a job at a warehouse. Good pay. Stable. You were right. Had to grow up. I'm trying. I stared at the message for a long time, then replied, Leora, I'm glad you're doing better. It wasn't a hug. It wasn't a reconciliation. But it was a start. By the second year, something became clear. My parents weren't trying to buy me back. They weren't pretending everything was fine. They weren't romanticizing the past. They were rebuilding something new with me, something based on honesty instead of dependency. My therapist said one day, they lost their daughter for a while. Now they're trying to earn her back. I wasn't sure who cried first in that session, me or her. The jar now holds $1,847. Each payment came in quietly. $5, $10, $20, sometimes $50, each enclosed with a handwritten note. We're still learning. Thank you for giving us another chance. We love you. No strings attached. We're living within our means now. It feels good. Page by page, dollar by dollar, truth by truth, they rebuilt a bridge they had burned down years ago. Not because I needed the money, but because they needed to give it. To prove something to themselves. To prove something to me. My 35th birthday. On the morning of my 35th birthday, I sat in a coffee shop in downtown Chicago with sunlight streaming through the window, warming the pages of the notebook I brought there every year to reflect on my life. My phone buzzed. A text from my mother. Mom, happy birthday, sweetheart. No strings attached. Just love. Then a photo. My parents in their tiny one-bedroom apartment, smiling awkwardly beside a homemade cake. In frosting, slightly messy but heartfelt, was written, Happy birthday, Leora. No guilt, no demands, just a celebration of me. For the first time in decades, my chest felt light. My phone buzzed again. A separate message from Dad. We know we can never undo the past, but we can honor your boundaries, your life, your autonomy. We're grateful you let us back in, even just this far. We love you, always. I didn't cry in public, but something inside me softened so deeply it felt like thawing snow. Now I talk to them once a month. Nothing dramatic, nothing crisis-driven, just simple conversations. How their jobs are going, how the neighbor's cat keeps sneaking into their apartment, how they joined a budgeting class, how they're proud of themselves for living within their means for the first time. They never ask for a cent. I never offer one. And for the first time in my life, I feel like their daughter, not their lifeline, not their ATM, not their savior, just their daughter. A daughter with boundaries, a daughter with her own life, a daughter they respect now, because I finally respected myself enough to demand it. Healing didn't come from the money they repaid. It came from the truth they finally faced, and the truth I finally accepted. You can love people deeply and still refuse to drown for them. My jar is almost full now. Not of cash, of proof. Proof that even fractured families can learn new ways to love.